Welcome back to part 2 of making Rocket Ship Santa. Last video I left off, we were embroidering piece number 1. All right, I have come to the end of my string and I wanted to show you guys how I tie my knots. So just a little end here. I'm going to go down to the back side of the fabric, 1 stitch length away. And then turn your fabric over. And to tie a knot, I'm going to get just a small bit of felt. I'm not going through to the front side. I'm just getting a little bit on the back side. Pull through to make a loop. And then I am going to put my needle through that loop and pull it tight. And I'm going to repeat this 2 more times. So I have a nice little knot there. Go underneath of that knot and through, whoops, through the loop. And that will hold. And then I will cut it down, leave just a tiny little bit of string there so it doesn't, so the knot doesn't come undone. And I'm going to grab 2 more strands of white floss. And then to restart to continue this outline pattern, I'm going to come up as if in the same location as if I still had string on my needle, right at that stitch length, the beginning of that stitch length. And I'm going to make sure my needle is on the right side of the thread. So everything is on the left side, the same way that I hold it when I'm stitching. And then you just continue. Stitch length about 1/8 of an inch away. Back up through that exact same hole as your previous stitch. All right, after you have finished all of your white outline stitch, we will move on to these stars that are on the front. And when we turn the back of our cover photo over, we can see that this is a straight stitch. This is a very simple stitch, goes very quickly. And we're going to use 2 strands for these top stars. So I have the same needle that I was using in my outline stitch. I have a lot of thread left. You can continue using this. And we'll do the first one over here on the right side. For a straight stitch, you're going to come up at the top. And you're going to go down at the bottom. When I'm doing my straight stitches, I do really like to make sure that the threads do not cross. It just gives it a more even look. So when I have about this much left, I will go ahead and just make sure that these 2 strands are separated. When I pull them down, they lay side by side and not twisting or on top of each other. And the last spot for this star. And when you're pulling tension on these, you don't want to pull too hard. That could definitely bunch your felt. You just want to make sure that it's going to lay nicely on the front and no gapping or loops on the back. So for these stars then, the next important thing is securing them in the middle. These are pretty long stitches and they'll be okay. But I like to come up in the middle, just give them a little security stitch. I'll come up on one side, doesn't matter where. And then I'll cross over to the exact opposite side so that I hold all of those stitches in place in the middle. Just like that. And then I will tie and we're done. You can see on the front we have white French knots in some of these locations. French knots are notoriously difficult, especially for beginners. You can look up other YouTube embroidery artists for tutorials on French knots. I personally, on my own stockings, prefer to just use a little white bead, and then that saves me a lot of time, and I think it looks really cute. So I'm going to go ahead and get my white beads out, and I'm just going to put a little white bead at each of these French knot locations, and then we'll see which little dots are left on the front, and those will be sequins. Diamond shaped line is the silver metallic thread. So I wanted to touch on this thread just a little bit. You're going to get a card with the thread wrapped around it. Unwind this thread and use short lengths. So I will only use about 18 inches at a time. And that is because anything longer, it does have a tendency to twist and not. So this one is about 18 inches. And the other exception to this thread is that I also use the larger applique needle for the metallic thread. And this is another outline stitch. I'm going to come up at the end, just like your other thread. And notice I'm taking it kind of slow here. That is very helpful with this metallic. The end result is so sparkly, really does add a lot to the stocking when it's all done. All right, the top piece, number 1, is embroidered and sequined. I'm going to go back to my instructions now. And starting out, I do recommend to highlight the steps that you have completed so you know exactly where you are. I did this when I first started out. It's very, very helpful. So I have embroidered. I didn't personalize because I'm not sure who this stocking is going to be for. So I did skip that. We'll cover that in another video. And I sequined the front of the stocking front. So we are going to move on to step number